Alright, welcome. This is HackerRank. It's basically a place where you can go to do coding challenges. A lot of these I have done before, as you'll see, but it's been a few years. A lot of these should be really simple, especially this one is the first one. I think I've done this one before, but obviously it's not that complicated a one, so shouldn't matter that much, but I'm just going to run through it. So basically, compute the function solve me first to compute the sum of two integers. Like I said, this should be really simple. So we have two integers being input, and we got to complete the solve me first function, and we return the sum of a and b. So it looks like it looks like it's basically already done this for me. This should be really, like, it doesn't even, it literally just tells me right here what to do. Okay, alright, well, this is kind of silly, isn't it? That is literally what we need to do. So there we go. We submit our code, and we run the test cases, and there we go. We did it. Okay, so that one's really simple. It's just using a static method, solve me first, and basically this is return. I don't know if I need to explain the code, the really like basic code parts of it. So our return value is basically what this method is expecting to return. So you can see here we've got a scanner which reads from system input. So basically you're going to enter in a value in the console and it's going to pick it up. So you've got this int next int. Whatever the first value that's entered is going to be stored in A. The second value that's entered in the console is going to be stored in B. We are expecting integers, as you can see, raw data types, and we are using specifically the method nextInt because we are expecting it to be an integer. And then we declare this value so that you could just, this isn't super necessary because you could declare it here like that, and it should still work, right? Yeah, either way, works just fine. And this is our static method. It's called statically. It's declared in the same class, so there's nothing special we need to do about that. And we're passing in an A and a B. I don't really like how the hint kind of just told me what to do, but I guess because this is the most basic challenge, it's also trying to teach me. But yeah, so we return. This is the return type. Basically, this is what it's expecting to return. So a return value is basically at the end of this function, what do we expect to get back? So you'll see here, what do we expect to store in this value? And we expect to store an int here, right? So that's what we're returning. So this should give us back an integer. And since we're just doing a simple addition, we can kind of just do it like that. It's not very complicated. And it just works. So we'll go back to Warmup and find a new thing to do. So given an array of integers, find the sum of its elements. For example, if the array is 1, 2, 3 equals 6, so return 6. Complete the simple array sum function in the editor below. It must return the sum of the array elements as an integer. Simple array sum has the following parameters. An array of integers, the first line contains an integer n, denoting the size of the array. Okay. The second line, it's not really necessary. Well, I guess it helps. Oh gosh, okay, there's a little more that's done for me here than I expected. Okay. Print the sum of the array's elements as a single integer. So our first line gives us the size of the array, and then the next few lines give us the actual array. So we know it's 6, and it gives us 6 values separated by spaces in the console. So we just want to sum them, basically. So this is a little more complicated of a thing. We're not using basically a scanner anymore. We are now, for some reason, writing to a file. I'm not really sure why we're doing that, but that's what we're doing. Okay, yeah, whatever. So we just need to sum the array. So this is basic. Now, it's interesting because we could literally get the size of the array since we have a list here. You see? So we could get array.size via that. Let me just, I'll just go ahead and write the code here. So we want basically a sum. We're returning an int, so we want to declare it outside. So for int I, this is just basically a starting thing. Well, I is less than, hold on. I don't like the way this is set up. This feels kind of weird. Wait, no, now I'm realizing that they literally just... Oh, okay. Alright, I was a little confused by it. But they did seemingly... Okay. Sorry. Got really confused because I was like, are they passing the array in here with the size? But it doesn't seem like it. It seems like it's giving me the array without the size. So I'm not entirely sure why they even told me they were passing in the size, except to make sense of this, but like that's kind of a bizarre thing to do. So we want to declare the sum, and we should set it equal to 0. And then we want to loop through. Okay, yeah. I wasn't sure if that was going to work, so I was like, maybe I should just write the code and like try to hope that it works. Okay, so yeah, I don't know why they've set it up this way. This seems really strange that I guess they want to take care of all that, and they just want to kind of have you get the thing. But then it seems weird that they tell you that the input is going to be a 6, because that's pointless information. All you really need to know is that into this method, you're not getting that 6. You're just getting the array. So in order to deal with that, we can just take the size of the array, array.size, which just basically comes with the Java list. I believe it's a util? Java util.list. Comes prepackaged with Java. So if you have Java, you'll have that. You'll also have this integer container type. So basically, this is a for loop. I won't explain all this just yet, although I could. Basically, we declared this sum element. This sum element, we want it to start at 0, so we want to give it a value to start at. The reason for this is if we are using sum plus equals, and we just add something and the sum doesn't actually have, here, let me show you. If I don't give this a value and I try to use a plus equals, what's going to happen is the code's going to break here, because sum hasn't been given, it hasn't been initialized. It literally says that. It hasn't been initialized, so it doesn't have a starting value. So we don't know what sum equals. It doesn't equal anything, you know? So to add, what are we adding to? Like, there's no starting value to add to. It's not just going to assume it's 0. So we have to declare that we want it to start at 0. That makes sense. We're doing the same thing here in I equals 0. This is your basic for loop. So this is our basic starting variable that we're going to loop with. This declares that this is kind of like the while part of it. So we're going to keep running this loop while this I value is less than the size of the array. And then over every loop, so once we hit this bracket, we're going to increment I by 1. Now this is kind of a shortcut syntax. This is equivalent to I plus equals 1. It's also equivalent to I equal to I plus 1. That's 3 ways you can write that. It'll work all the same way. I plus plus, it's just such a it's just such a, it's a necessary syntax because we use this kind of thing quite a lot, just incrementing a value by 1. You can do the same thing with 2 if you do I plus equals 2, but there's like no shortcut for any value like that anyways. So I is going to loop through. What we're doing here is we're summing, we use .get from array to retrieve the ith value. So on the first run, I is equal to 0, we get 0. We get the item in position 0, which if you're familiar with code at all, you'll know that values always start in 0. So this is position 0. This 1 is in position 0. It's not in position 1. For beginners, that might be a little bit of a confusing concept to understand, but that's why we start at 0. Always start at 0. So we're starting at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is in position 5. So we get position 0 and we add it to the sum. So we get 0 plus 1. That gives us 1. Now, since we're summing all of the values, we just want to loop through the list and then add that to our sum. So our sum is 1 now. We grab 2, we add it to the sum, and it gives us 3. So our sum is now equal to 3. So this is a pretty basic summation. And yeah, that's it. And basically, we want to close out our loop here when it's less than the size. So this is different than if we did less than or equal to. We would get an arrays out of bounds exception, as you'll see. Unless it just breaks. Index out of bounds exception, right? Because the size of our thing is 6, and we're trying to retrieve the element at position 6, which there is no position 6. There's only a position 5, right? Because we're starting at 0 to 5. So we need to specifically, it's very important that we stop looping before we hit 6. So we don't want to equal the size, because that would be 1 more than the index position of the last thing. So this is basically, that's our solution. And then we just return the sum. Basic stuff. Next. All right, compare the triplets. Alice and Bob each created one problem for HackerRank. A reviewer rates the 2 challenges, awarding points on a scale from 1 to 100 for 3 categories: problem clarity, originality, and difficulty. The rating for Alice's challenge is the triplet A equal to A0, blah, blah, blah. And the rating for Bob's challenge is the triplet B. Task is to find their comparison points by comparing A0 with B0. If A is greater than B, Alice is awarded 1 point. If B is greater, Bob's awarded the point. And if they're equal, neither person receives a point. Comparison points is the total points poisoned. Give A and B determine their respective comparison points. For element 0, Bob is awarded a point because A0. Yep. 3 is greater than 1. This is clearly a typo. For the equal elements A, yep. And so Alice would get this point. Yep. Okay, so the return array is 1, 1 with Alice's score first and Bob's second. Complete the function. Here's our sample input. Here's our sample output. So it's just the points. I suppose it's Alice's score in the first position and Bob's score in the second. Yep. Okay. So we're comparing triplets. So let's start pretty simple. Let's call it int A equals 0. This is Alice's score. Int B equals, well, actually no, I can't do that, but let's make this easy to read for everyone. So Bob's score equals 0. We know that these are the same size, so we can kind of cheat a little bit and grab a dot size here We don't need b dot size because we know they're the same. So we can just loop through. Basically, it didn't really indent these for me. Okay. So here's our basic code here. It's passed the test cases, so we already know that it works. Basically what we're doing here, so I've created Alice score variable and Bob score variable, and I've set them both to 0. They start with no points. Additionally, I created our solution array because I know that that's what I have to return in the end here. And eventually, I'll have to add Alice's score and Bob's score in the first and second positions, respectively, after I've calculated them. So for here, we're looping through the list. I've only used a.size because I know that they're both the same size. I don't have to account for the size of b because I know it's the same size as a. So I can only it's fine for me to loop through with a's size. So we're doing basic comparisons here. This is an if statement. This is an else if statement. If the value we get in Alice's thing is greater, obviously we increment Alice's score. If it's the opposite, we increment Bob's score. Now there would be an issue. Here, let me look at the array. You might be wondering to yourself, why don't we just use an else here? The reason for that is because that wouldn't work. Because we have two values that are equal, and it wouldn't account for those. So it would give Bob an extra point. And it would give Bob an extra point, and that would be incorrect. They should both have 1 point. Alternatively, you could go and try to do something like... This is a very weird way to do this, but you could do it this way. Also, I did that wrong. Make sure that when you're doing a comparison, you don't do a single equals. You need a double equals. Very important because you use a single equal sign as an assignment operator rather than a comparison operator. So it'll throw you an exception if you were to do that. I mean, let me just do it. I was like, should I do that? Because it's gonna be terrible. Yeah, so it's just gonna give us an error if we try to do that. But the solution would also be incorrect. So now if we do it like this, this would be this is weird. This is a weird way to do it, but theoretically, you could do it like this and say we do nothing if that happens, and then we increment Bob's score on an else, and that would work. But this is it looks so stupid. I don't know why anyone would do it like that, but you could. You know, it's really dumb. And conventionally, I think if you were working in the field, most people would complain about you doing some bullshit like this. This looks terrible. There's no reason to do it like this. It looks like shit, and you're not doing anything in this else block, so it's obviously a bad way to do it. But you could. It would work. It's just stupid. All right, moving on.